So this is your typical base map, that kind of thing you would see in Google Earth and things like that. So the first thing that we're going to do is add on a little bit of extra information, and I'm going to turn on the layer here of the Northern Ireland river courses so that we can spot the area that we're going. This is the river that we're going to be following down here, and I can pull on some more information here about where the hard engineering is found along the river and where in particular the flood risks are along that river course. So that gives us a little bit of our secondary data that we're able to use initially to help us. But here was the data that we collected here. So this is our Knock River pathway data, and we'll go in and have a little bit of a look once that's drawn down. Now I'm just going to change the base map here so that we can see those proportional circles stand out a little bit better, and maybe turn off some more of those layers. So let's choose the human geography one. And at this point, I think I'll turn off the flood risk area so that we can see a little bit better of the different sizes that are shown there. Now, what are they representing? This is a question on a scale of 1 to 6, how environmentally sensitive did we feel that the management was at that particular area, so that you can definitely see as you move along here that the size of the circles is increasing as you move from our initial point here. But let's go in and have a look at this initial point, this tiny little circle just in here, and I'm going to click on this, and that will pull up a little bit more data and information here. What we were able to do was to rate this and pull in some information here, comment on it, and also take a series of photographs. Here's photograph number 1 showing the area, and it turns out that this area here, the river is entirely culverted, so it doesn't really get much more hard engineering than this. You can't actually see the river at all at this point. And there they are, a group of geography teachers from CALC, all out taking their photographs, or more like some kind of 1980s kind of random album cover pose there. But there we are, out having that investigation. So we're able to collect some data there. And again, I can change the base map. Let's say that I want to pull back in here again the imagery so that I can get a sense of that. And what we see here very much is that the river has completely disappeared. Very, very hard engineering. And then we followed it across the road into the area here, which is survey site number 2. Now you can tell from the land use around here that this is still very, very built up. And there we have our hard engineering either side. But let's take a look at the data that we're going to collect here, and the comments that are in there. And again, the opportunity for us to put in some photographs. So basically this is giving you a bit of a sense of what we did as we travelled along the river that day. And what I said to the teachers was that the first couple of survey points, typically you might have to explain a little bit more of what to do, just like you would in any kind of data collection, but very, very quickly. This becomes very fast and efficient for us to do. You can see that this is very, very hard engineering, your flood walls there, but there have been some attempts to introduce a little bit of habitat diversity here with some limited effect at this point in the river. And so we went on further and further down the river. You can explore that yourself if you take a look at some of the different points that we went to, and you can see, if I just zoom out here a little bit, the size of the circles are beginning to get a little bit bigger as we move further down here. So let's come into this survey site, and we can immediately see from the aerial photography that there is residential area right up to the right bank of the river, and there is a flood wall there. But when we move over into the left bank of the river, you can see that there's a little bit of space between the river and where the housing is. And as soon as there's a little bit of space opens up, there's a chance for different types of management. So again, we were able to put in the comments there, and here are some of our photographs of the area. And you can see there the river, which is looking already much, much more natural. There's an awful lot more habitat diversity. And over here towards the left, you're a little bit of land use zoning, because you have got an area here that's not going to be badly impacted should the river flood. And we can use that bit of the natural floodplain on the left-hand side of the bank to protect it. Right-hand side of the bank, however, residential area comes very, very close, so there is a need for the harder engineering to take place at that point in the river. And there you can see the flood wall protecting those houses either side. And indeed, issues of accessibility, that the steps maintain the flood wall with a ramp there to allow accessibility for wheelchair users. But where there was the opportunity to use a little bit of the natural floodplain to act as a natural store, they were able to do so. And so on we went, further and further and further, stopping off at different locations, finding that the further down we go, the more and more natural the river is, until we come to this area here, the Orangefield Park, where you can see a river that has very, very significant meandering, because this is a river restoration project. And what we were able to do in this location was to get some information about that, and then take some photographs that would really help our students to understand. This is the before. This is whenever the river was getting rewilded again, whenever the river restoration was taking place. Some other examples. So there was still a need for a little bit of flood wall protection there where the houses were nearby. But what does this look like now? We're getting into the stage. We'll get this photograph here, I think, will show us a little bit more of what it looks like now, where you can get a much greater sense of the floodplain developing in a natural way. That's an earthen levee, but it's set well back from the river itself. And we now have a river that is pretty much fully restored to its original state, with a lot of habitat diversity within it. So that was the little journey that we went on, and we were able, as I say, to collect the data and to compare as you move out from the very, very first site where it's incredibly built up. But as soon as you start to get a little bit of space around the river, there's a favouring of introducing soft engineering as much as you possibly could. So that was our primary data. That was what we collected. But we were also able to look here at how we might bring in some secondary data to help support our analysis here. So I can put on here a vulnerability index. This came from some secondary data, which shows the multiple vulnerability index by super output area. And it is possible to see the and explore correlations between areas of greater social and economic deprivation and the space that there may or may not be for software engineering strategies that could be used. We can also turn on a layer. I'll just turn that one off, and I'll turn this one off too. I'm going to turn on something about the number of people that live nearby. These are proportional circles. Sorry, that's the one I wanted to turn off there. These are proportional circles for the number of people that are living in the nearby area. I can change the transparency in that to make them stand out just that little bit better. And you begin to see there just how many people are at risk from the flooding that live in that close area. And finally, we have some other maps we can put on. This is a map. I'll turn our data back on from the field trip. This is a map from Belfast in 1923. I'm going to go back in time to see, maybe understand why there would be more constraints in around about this area, because this has been a developed area in Belfast, very highly developed even there in 1923. And as such, it has been constrained in terms of its the space for software engineering approaches. And obviously this area now has been developed, it's been suburbanized, but you can see that there was a park at that stage, and there was some open area there that has certainly been retained in that urban park. So let's zoom back out again, and I will turn that off, and that is how we initially collected the data. That's the data that we were able to collect, and we've actually produced a usable resource that we could get our pupils to explore, doing something very similar to what I've just shown you there, exploring some of the rationale and the reasons behind the balance between hard and soft engineering, and getting them to go in and interact with the primary data that we collected and some other secondary data sources to really engage powerfully with this little task.